Thank you. I will call this meeting of the Police Services Board to order on May 9th, 2023 at 1 o'clock. I will start with the land acknowledgement statement. We acknowledge with respect the history, spirituality, and culture of the Anishinaabe, the people of the Three Fires known as Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi Nation, who have inhabited this land from time immemorial. And further give thanks to the Chippewas of Saugeen and the Chippewas of Nawash, now known as the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, as the traditional keepers of this land. We also recognize the Métis and Inuit, whose ancestors shared this land and these waters. May we all, as treaty people, live with respect on this land and live in peace and friendship with all its diverse peoples. Are there any additions to the agenda? I think I actually may have a couple of more roads to mention with the other ones in there on speeding. So I'll add those at that time. Could we have an approval of the agenda? Mover and seconder. Barry and Peter, all in favor? That is carried. Is any declaration of pecuniary interest? You can call it if it arises during the meeting. Moving on to minutes of the previous meeting from March 14th, 2023. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Peter and Barry. And is there any discussion, any questions there? Seeing none, I will call the vote. Geez, the word just went totally out. Call the vote. Thank you. Carried. Items on the agenda for delegations and public question period. I'll just read off that any person who wishes to appear before Committee of the Whole regarding an item on the agenda shall make written application to the clerk by 9 a.m. the day of the meeting. To register, you can go to georgianbluffs.ca/delegations or call the clerk's office at 519-376-2729, extension 603. For items not on the agenda, we have Crime Stoppers of Grey Bruce, Peter Reed. So, Peter, if you would just like to come to the microphone and go ahead. And welcome today.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to say the original intent of this presentation was to kind of shake you guys upside down for some money, and Georgia Bluffs beat us to the punch. We had applied for a grant there, and we were very grateful for the support that Georgia Bluffs has given us. And I myself am a resident of Georgia Bluffs, so it's greatly appreciated that a little bit of my tax dollars went there too. I'll just give a very brief overview of the program. Crime Stoppers of Grey Bruce is a cooperative partnership between the public, the media, and law enforcement, which provides the community with a means to anonymously assist in the solving of crime and improving the quality of life. Crime Stoppers is not directly a police program. Crime Stoppers is able to address the two main issues that in some cases would prevent citizens from coming forward with timely information about crime, namely fear and apathy. We offer complete anonymity. We don't take people's names. We don't take any identifying information on them. There's no need for them to testify in court, and they will never be asked to testify in court. So they don't have to worry about any repercussions. We have court-protected case law on the anonymity, so it is protected as long as it's given in good faith. And the apathy, we offer a cash reward of up to $2,000, and that tends to motivate some people. Crime Stoppers is a nonprofit charitable organization. We were formed in 1987. We're governed by a civilian board of directors comprised of volunteers throughout Grey and Bruce with an office in Owen Sound. We have one paid employee who has been with our program for over 25 years now. If someone is interested in making a tip to Crime Stoppers, they can reach us at www.cstip.ca. They can submit a secure web tip there. They can download the P3 mobile tips app and leave a tip there. Or, of course, call us at 1-800-222-TIPS, which is 8477. A little history of the success of the program. Since 1987, when we started in Grey Bruce, there's been over 1,761 criminal arrests, $50 million in drugs taken off the streets, and again, that's just within Grey Bruce, and 2,733 cases cleared. Looking more recently, within the last 2 years, drugs seized, $625,190. Cash recovered, $213,000, and property recovered just a little over $300,000. So that's for 2021 and 2022. During that time, we received 1,358 initial tips and 4,700 follow-up tips relating to the initial ones. 64 arrests, 42 cases cleared, 281 charges laid. So the program does work quite well. And that's pretty much it, since you guys were already so generous with us before.
Thank you, Peter. What I would say for going forward and what we'll do here today is forward this to council. And then council will forward it to budget time when we go through the donations listing again. So it'll just automatically forward to there from here. And I can't speak for all of council, but I don't see why we wouldn't continue on with that, which we did this past year.
And it's just to talk to the funding briefly. We've approached all the municipalities within Grey Bruce that we deal with to assist with funding. Historically, other crime stoppers programs, for example, Guelph Wellington, they have 2 full-time employees. One is paid for by Guelph, one is paid for by the Wellington County. So with us having basically 17 different municipalities and such we deal with, we just figured we'd just spread it out to all of you.
Yep.
Hopefully we get a little bit from each one.
Good.
Greatly appreciate that. Thank you
Okay.
very much.
Thank you very much. Rayburn, do we need to give direction here, have a motion to give direction in that manner?
Yes, I would say to get a mover and seconder to defer this to council.
I'll move.
Give direction to council?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So Barry and Peter, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much for taking the time to come here today. So moving on to correspondence. We have one from Laurie Pearson about Old Beach Drive, a speed limit reduction. And the same thing is coming up for concession 17 and Lindenwood Road. Do we want to handle them separately or together?
Perhaps separately,
Okay.
should there be different direction from either.
Okay. Questions or comments? No, turn it on. You had it on. Hit the button again.
I'd recommend that we pass this on to our public work or to lower the speed limit on Old Beach Drive. I think if there's no sign to there, I don't think it's open at all on that road. It isn't, sir. Okay. Well, I recommend that we lower the speed limit there because it is a rough road.
I think that's what they're asking for, is to have that one reduced from 50 to 30. Do you want to speak to it, Peter? Go ahead.
Quite familiar with the road as I live just north of it. The odd time I want to see what's happening on Georgian Bay, so I take a quick swing down there. It currently is posted at either end where it leaves the Grey Road 1 at Indian River and it comes back up onto Bombing Beach Road. There is a 50 sign at either end. The end that where the boat launch is, once you make that corner up to probably 3/4 of the way, maybe a little bit before you come into that next bend, is where it that's where their concern is, because it's a narrow road. It's not built to any sort of building code, I wouldn't think, at the time, because there used to be cottages out there many years ago. So right now I don't see how you could speed on the north end of it, because the potholes and everything are so bad. They may be coming after public works or the township to try and fix the road. However, then we'd have to put in speed bumps or something. But all that being said, I'd be very much in favor. I'm driving at 30 through there. There's no real need to go any faster, and there are tons of people out walking, but I don't know does it go to Public Works and then they put a recommendation to council, or does it have to go to the county? I'm not sure how these speed limit changes happen, but I'm 100% in favor of it. And some enforcement thereafter, but it's not a highly traveled road, but I would imagine some of the residents get antsy when vehicles fly by at a little bit faster than what, I mean, if you post 50, someone, if you was 60 along there, it would be pretty crazy. But I don't know how you could maintain it at the corner. It is pretty rough at the top end. Anyway, I would certainly support it.
So I wonder if we do turn that over to operations and ask them to take a look at it, or should it go to council for that direction to come from council?
Through you, I believe this can be deferred to our staff to then look into this, to then bring it back to the board. And then from that point, it can be brought to council.
Okay,
You will need a mover and seconder. This is regarding the Old Beach Drive.
okay.
I move that motion.
Okay, sorry, Peter seconds, so all in favor? That is carried. Okay, so on to the next one, which is the Lindenwood Road and Concession 17. I think part of the concern out there is that there are no speed limits posted. So that automatically tells people that it's an 80. So the direction there might be just to find out from operations what the speed limit, what they think the speed limit on that road is, and have them at least get signage up. So I think it should be a 60, but I don't know what they think the speed limit is. So maybe that would be the first direction, is to find out what our operations department thinks the speed limit is on that road, and then go from there. And if it is in fact 60, then we need to get them to get those signs up saying that's what it is.
Also,
Fair.
it mentioned on there that, brushing on the one side of the road to help for safety. Maybe that should be looked at also.
Yep. So maybe we just forward this whole thing through to operations for them to look at what is the speed limit supposed to be, to have it posted if it is at 60, and to get the brushing done out there as well. And I was on that road last night. People are speeding along there, and it's not a real good scenario.
You'll just require a mover and seconder.
Okay, so mover and seconder, Barry and Peter, all in favor. That is carried. And if I can add the one, Joint Street is another one. Now, Joint is posted, but people are speeding through there, and I wonder if I can refer you, Mr. Richardson, asking what can be done in that scenario where, go ahead. In Shallow Lake, so as you're heading west through Shallow Lake, it goes off to the left and heads out around to Shoal Block Road. So when it's a posted speed limit, is there anything we can do in that area to help slow people down? And my understanding of what it is probably a couple of times a day when people are traveling out to Shoal Block and SPI to and from work. There is also the heavy trucks on that road, which we've got a sign saying they're not to be there, but they still come through that way. So not sure what we can do. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. So having been a detachment commander in many areas since 2017, traffic complaints and speeding complaints are the one constant in every meeting that I go to. And having said that, it's important to recognize that our resources are not infinite, so we can't be in all places at all times. Now, what we do is we plan for such things. So we have a device called the Black Hat, and we post that Black Hat in certain areas. And what that does is gather data for us. It tells us a couple of things. You mentioned larger vehicles, notwithstanding their ability to be on that road, but frankly, there's a perception sometimes with speed where larger vehicles and vehicles that are louder appear to be going faster than they actually are. So we have this device that is that can't be seen. So it gathers empirical data for us. It tells us how many vehicles, it tells us the size of the vehicle, tells us time of day, and then gives us the need for enforcement in the report that it generates. So we'll use that to determine the effective deployment of resources. It also gives empirical data back to those who brought the issue forward to understand that there may not be the issue that they perceive, which is not to say that they weren't legitimately perceiving that way. It just is an issue of perception. If it's determined that there is a challenge on that road or a speeding issue on that road, then we will create what we call a focus patrol. And what that data does is gives us the ability to put the officers there in the right place at the right time. So instead of spending the whole day there or going at 1 o'clock in the afternoon when there isn't an issue, we're there at the right time. We're addressing the problem at the right time. So the other thing that I would ask is that folks call us on our non-emergent number and give us the information. Maybe give us vehicle descriptors, give us something a little more specific so we can deal with the individual issues as well as sometimes the broader issue. I am going to talk later in the report when we get to that about some of the summer things we're doing for traffic, and that might be able to be deployed that way as well. But get to that later in the report. I hope that speaks to your question.
Does very well. And just a question on that then, what is the non-emergent number that maybe we could publish that as well so that people are more aware of it than the 911 is?
Well, thank you for that question. I should have included that. So
Okay.
it's 1-888-310-1122. So 1-888-310-1122.
Perfect. We will publish that as well then so that helps people know where they can go to. Thank you. That's perfect. So Rayburn, I don't think we need any further direction given on that one. So what I'm thinking is that a request we can make for Joint Street then to have that, you call it a black hat device?
Certainly, I can take that information back today. We can put it on our list of deployments.
Okay. Is that all you need from us or do you need us to have a motion on file? Okay.
That's more than enough for me.
Okay.
I can take that information.
Okay. So that one we could just be receiving for information then for the time being?
I would suggest best it would be to have a mover and seconder
Okay.
and then to call the vote, sorry.
Okay. Okay. So Peter, then Barry, all in favor. That is carried. Perfect. Thank you. Okay. And we're over then to detachment commander report.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you. To see a bit of different complexion to the Police Service Board report with all of our municipalities. I'm starting to trend towards the one detachment, one board, doing quarterly reports with some specifics for each municipality. And having come from a detachment that was one detachment, one board, I see some efficiencies there and I'm just sort of gradually processing. I did start in my message that it is nice to see some better weather in the area. Having said that, the better weather also brings with it an influx in the population for our entire detachment area, and that brings with it some challenges as well. I'm going to touch on it later in the report, but we have some technology that we've introduced in the OPP. We have in-car cameras now and some new radio equipment that I'll talk about in the report. We also have an increase in impaired drivers, which is a good news, bad news story, and I'll touch on that a little bit as well. And again, I'll hit on the summer plan as well, how we plan to address the population increase. So I'll start with our crime unit, where we always kind of start. Our crime unit investigates major crime or the most serious of crimes, usually offenses of violence or sexual assault. The more serious crimes is what they investigate. We have a very dedicated, diligent crime unit who's working very, very hard. Of note, there was an offense in another municipality, and it's always important to recognize what happens in one municipality affects another municipality. Our clients, I will call them, don't recognize borders, and they tend to victimize many municipalities in the area. This particular one was interesting in that it was an arson investigation, and the offender in that case was progressing in the severity of the arsons. And that unit was able to, through their investigative practice, identify, charge, and bring that person before the courts and stop the arsons. The arsons were getting to the point where they were no longer out of doors and they were coming indoors in some public areas. So getting very serious. And they did a great job. Our crime unit is also preparing for a number of court processes for violent crimes, for homicides. Not sure if I brought this to the board last time, but one of the homicides that they were successful in investigating, I'm so proud of our crime unit. They started with essentially a body that had been disposed of in a rural area and no other evidence, and they were able to follow that investigation through, identify a subject in a different area, a different municipality, arrest, charge, and convict that person of a historical homicide. It was sad circumstances always when somebody loses their life, but the ability of our crime unit and our investigation to give answers to that family, it was a good day for us. That's all we can do at that point, is provide some information and answer some questions for them. And they were able to do that. It was a pretty proud moment. Move on to street crimes. There was an offender from another area who cut off their ankle bracelet, so their electronic monitoring or their GPS. Through investigation, that offender was tracked to our area, and through the efforts of our street crime and some of their partnerships, we were able to take that person into custody before they could commit more offenses in our area and return them back to the area of origin. So that was a good news story for us. They've also worked on some property crime and some significant property crime. And again, I talk about, although the mention is not Georgian Bluffs in particular, I can say with confidence that the effects had in the neighboring municipalities have an effect on Georgian Bluffs as well, in terms of the deterrent factor, if you will. So they were able to execute a search warrant in Chatsworth, where they recovered a significant amount of drugs and stolen property, including vehicles. They were able to identify that they were altering and removing VINs in the process of their criminal activity. So a complex investigation, but they did a great job. And then again, another property crime warrant where drugs and crime go hand in hand. Property crime and drugs, they're often found together as one takes the other. So in this case, they were able to execute a warrant, recover a car, a camping trailer, or another truck, some stolen plates, and again, you see 21 grams of suspected cocaine, scales, tools, and they were able to get all that property back. We're able to get it back to the rightful owners. So they continue to do excellent work. I introduced the MSERP program in our last time together. We continue to be thrilled with the progress of that particular partnership. We have seen the last stat that I saw, and it's not included in here, forgive me, but I think it was just shy of 60 deferrals from hospital. So that's 60 people who haven't gone into an emergency room. That's 60 people who are getting the right service in the right place at the right time. We are very closely tracking the statistics in relation to that program in the hopes of getting more funding and enhancing the program and expanding the program. I wouldn't say there's a need for 24/7 coverage because of the way the call volume goes, but we would certainly like to expand the hours of operation and the days of operation. And I can say with confidence that our partners are in agreement. Just a wonderful program. We're thrilled. And you see a nice picture of our two clinicians there. They're fantastic. I should point out there's an added benefit to an internal benefit for our officers. So I've been in other detachments where the program was up and running. We see a trust and a relationship between the clinicians and our members. Our members experience difficult things and see difficult things. Our members also benefit from some of the conversations and the information that's provided by the clinicians. So there's a spin-off benefit to our membership, not only the communities. Our auxiliary program. I probably bragged to you about our auxiliary program in the past. You recognize that it's all staffed by volunteers. We have Safeguard trained members now. We just had another one get trained up in Safeguard, and that's a program where if you've been the victim of property crime, these officers can attend your property and give you some tactics to what we call target harden your property. So you're not victimized again. It's statistically, if you're victimized once, the chances of being victimized again are greater. So this gives some information to folks to harden their property and maybe not be victimized again. I was honored to present more of our auxiliaries with long service awards. One member retired after 20 years. Another member received a 25-year recognition. Another member with a 5-year recognition. I did the math, and it's not my strong suit, I will admit, but since I've arrived in Grey Bruce, I have presented over 175 years of recognition to our auxiliary unit. I'll say with confidence, I'll brag a bit more. We are the envy of other detachment commanders who don't have the type of unit that we have. And it's these long-term members who really make the difference, as well as our younger folks that come in and help their community as well. But the balance of the two gives a very, very vibrant program. And I do brag to my other detachment commander colleagues how well we do here. I'm going to move on to the statistical portion. Calls for service are up in Georgian Bluffs, but they're up everywhere in the county. We're seeing an increase in calls for service across the board in every municipality and every area that we serve. Georgian Bluffs is no exception to this. We're watching the trends, and it's important for us to watch that because we have to staff accordingly. Especially this time of year with our business of people, more calls. So we can anticipate greater calls for services this summer is upon us. Violent crime, I'm watching this one. You'll notice in there it says 111% increase. That's because it went from 9 in 2022 to 19 in 2023. I'm keeping an eye on that to see the trends and where it goes in the next quarter to see if we need to maybe address that in a more holistic or specific way. But what I can say, you'll notice an increase in property crime as well. I'm not surprised to see an increase in those areas when I see an increase in calls for service. They go hand in hand. More calls, more of that type of crime. Now the violent crime, because those are the things that affect our community most, we'll keep an eye on that in quarter two. We're seeing the same significant increase. We'll have a look to see if we need to do some more specific planning to address that. No change in drug crimes. I've talked previously about our change in focus on drug investigations, where we now focus on the manufacturer, the distributor of drugs, as opposed to the addict or the end user. That means more complex, longer investigations, so fewer of them, and not as many simple possession charges where you're just charging an addict. So we're just refocusing our resources in a way that we think is more impactful. Criminal traffic. It's an interesting sort of correlation I see in the statistics here. Significant increase in criminal traffic. That's intentionally, in that we've assigned our officers in a different way to do ride and to focus on impaired drivers. So we've seen a significant increase in the enforcement of impaired drivers. The correlated and benefit to that is you see a reduction in motor vehicle collisions. So they go hand in hand. So I was very pleased to see that our efforts on one end had the desired result, where there's a decrease. Now, again, we're heading into our summer months, which more traffic, more people. We'll see if that trend continues. But I can say just anecdotally, over the last weekend, I read a shift briefing. There was 3 or 4 impaireds in one shift. I think we had 9 over the weekend, which is unusual. Something we're definitely keeping an eye on. But I'm going to do what I think is a brilliant segue here to the in-car camera system, which that's going to benefit all of these investigations. So every car in Grey Bruce now has an in-car camera. That camera will record every interaction with the public, and it has a couple of, well, more than a couple, but many benefits. First and foremost, it gives what we do transparency and accountability. So everything we do is on video. That enhances our public trust and confidence because they can see what we're doing. It also enhances our prosecutions and our court time because it's there. It's there to be seen. It's not an officer testifying. It's there on video. So it's hard to argue with video. So we see that benefiting our prosecutions and maybe reducing our court time. A reduction in court time puts our officers on the road a little more. So we're pretty happy about this program. The next step in this program will be body-worn cameras as well. Some of our members, our ERP members, have them right now, and we anticipate full deployment soon. So every officer will have an in-car camera and a body-worn camera. So everything done will be reported. all that evidence is captured I'm outside of my realm of expertise here, but it goes on to a cloud that's in Canada. It's stored and accessible. The other benefit of this program is the in-car cameras have automatic license plate readers. So every car that goes by, they can look at that license plate, process it, and then take action if they need to. It identifies wanted people. It identifies suspended drivers, expired plates. Please remind people that just because you don't have to pay for your validation anymore, you still have to register your place and do that every year or two, depending on how long you do it, because we're seeing a lot of that. A lot of people misunderstanding the validation process. So that the other interesting little tactic we use with these cameras, for example, if we had an Amber Alert, we could put these cars in choke points where traffic narrows down to one spot, and it can monitor hundreds of cars and pick out a plate that we're looking for. So it has a lot of investigative ability as well. So we're thrilled to have this. This is a tool in our toolbox, I call it now, just another thing that we can use to be more effective in what we do every day. To support that, we've also got a new radio system. The radio system we have today was introduced when I was on the job about 2 years. So it's probably about 20 years old, 19, 20 years old. Anything that's that long in the tooth starts to need to be replaced. So they're replacing our radio system, but it's not just for the OPP. It's for a lot of government organizations. So we'll have interoperability. We're excited about that. When you have a major event and we're working with our partners, whether it be EMS, fire, or other partners, they have access to seamless comms so we can talk to each other. So that's another addition that we're pretty excited about. And lastly, I'll talk about our summer staffing plan. It's no surprise to anybody that we experience an exponential increase in population in every municipality, from Southgate all the way through up to Toledo. We are the place where the rest of the province comes to recreate in the summer, and that brings a significant increase in population. Our detachment in and of itself does not have the resources to address that summer increase, but we have to recognize that it's a moment in time. So it's a period of the year. What we do is we've reached out through a new tool. It's called the Major Event Tool. It's a tool that was born out of the Ottawa deployment, and we're supporting the Ottawa Police Service. And it streamlines our ability to bring officers in from other places. So we have scheduled the majority of our shifts through the summer for officers to come in from across the province and support us here in Grey Bruce. So it's a force multiplier. You'll see officers from across the province, but they're here voluntarily. They're here because they wanted to support Grey Bruce, and it just bolsters our numbers significantly. We've also looked at it in a more analytical way. We took a look at the call volume, time of day, when we have the majority of calls, day of the week, where we have the majority of calls, compared that against what our staffing levels are for that day, and then what we think we need to effectively staff it. So we've looked at it in a very analytical way. So one day there might be a couple officers supporting, another day there might be 5 or 6, depending on what we need. And we've also looked at major events, your long weekends, your time of greater call volume, things of that nature. So we've been a little more tactical in that deployment, and we're hoping that that bears some fruit for us this year. Subject to any questions, that's what I have for the report.
Excellent, thank you. So Barry, over to you.
There's a couple questions I'd like to ask you. The new education for police officers now, Mr. Davis had announced that the education is down to grade 12, I believe. Join the police force. Do you think that will help to get new officers in? Because I know there's a shortage. And
it's an interesting question. I believe in education. I participate in continuing education myself to this day. I continue to take courses. I think education is important. I think education can come in many forms. So not just formally through post-secondary education or courses you can take on your own. Life can provide education. And what this allows is for people who have been in the trades, or people who have worked elsewhere and have gained some experience in that way in life, that can come join us now. I think the recruitment process is still fairly rigid in the sense that we are looking for specific things in people. It just deepens that pool for us. So to answer your question, that was a long way around. I do think it will help, but it doesn't mean, I think it's important to recognize that that doesn't mean lowering of standards. It doesn't mean that you're getting a lower quality police officer in your communities. It just gives us the opportunity to recruit from different areas.
Thank you. And the second question is, I had a ratepayer ask me, do you patrol every road in Georgian Bluffs? And I could not answer. I said, I know the main routes that you would certainly patrol, but
I would have to go back and look at the GPS data of every car over the last 2 years to see if we've hit every road. Honestly, we have a huge area with many, many, many secondary roads. And I would say there's probably a chance that there's some roads that we haven't been on. Doesn't mean we don't know they're there. It doesn't mean we can't get to them when we need to.
okay, I'll just send that back. Thank you.
They knew the answer when they asked the question.
You mentioned the major event tool. I think the last former commanders reports that came before us, they talked about in the summertime officers coming up from areas like Chatham or London, and there were government grants, and they actually asked our council and police service board for some support in that area to get more hours on the road when most needed. Is this major event tool sort of replace that, do you see, or that's where the direction is now?
So the major event tool has expanded our catchment area. It's gone to the whole province. So we're able to pull from a lot of different areas that we didn't before. Normally we were restricted to in region, and now we're able to pull from across the province. I won't be making any requests from any support from councils over and above the bill they already pay. I think we have capacity to address it. At least this summer, I want to pilot it this way.
That's I wasn't worried about the money side. I do recall we did support that motion last year because it's important. We know what our highway 6 and 10 can be like and will be like, unfortunately, at times. But anyway, your report's very detailed. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you. And I would just like to comment on what Barry started with there about the education requirement. So I was speaking to someone else, and their understanding was that while new recruitment people wouldn't need more than that grade 12, that ongoing education beyond that would be paid for by the government. So the idea would be you don't have to have that college degree before you can apply, that you can apply with a grade 12, but you're still going to be required to get that further education, just it's going to be paid for, was what this person understood. No.
I wish that were the case because I would love to have my own tuition covered, but it's not.
Yeah, so I wondered at that. That seemed
Probably
like
what
a
they're
huge,
thinking was, announcement, Your Worship, and I sort of personally benefited from this because my son's a recruit right now. There is no longer a fee to attend Ontario Police College. So there used to be a tuition to go to Ontario Police College, and that's been suspended as of the start of this year. So any recruit there now won't have to pay that tuition.
okay, and maybe that's what they were referring to then.
Yeah.
Okay. And if I could go back on your crime statistics where you were showing calls for service being up by 45%. Is there any idea of what has led to those being up so much? And does it have to do with kind of slackening of rules around COVID and such? More people are out and about, or?
But I do see a bit of a decrease in 2022, 2021 that were around COVID. So it could be just the freedom of people moving again. But I am seeing the increased calls for service across the area. I also see a lot of development in the area. More people, more calls for service, more need for police.
We won't tell our developers that you said they were the cause of some of that.
I don't think the developers.
No,
are
it's
cause.
just there's more
just
people
a
around.
natural. It's just a
Yeah,
natural
natural flow.
progression of people.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? I thank you. Excellent report. Very interesting. So thank you. And Rayburn, do we need then a motion to receive the report?
Yes, that the Detachment Commander's 2023 Q1 report covering the period of January 1st, 2023 to March 31st, 2023 be received. And they'll need a mover and seconder.
Peter and Barry, all in favor? That is carried. Thank you. We are no unfinished business, no new business. And the date of the next meeting will be July 4th at 1 o'clock. So if there's no further business, I will now call for adjournment of this meeting. If I could have a mover and a seconder. Barry and Peter. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. We are now adjourned. Oh, thank you.